Hi, I'm James Woodcock from pixelrefresh.com. This is Game and Gadget podcast number 41. And with me, as always, wherever possible, is Tony Warriner, co-founder of Revolution Software. How are you today, Tony?
Not too bad, not too bad. Bearing up.
Good, glad to hear it. So I know you've been busy working on a new game, which is going to come to Kickstarter soon, which we'll discuss in a moment. But I thought to start us off, we'd talk about FPGA, which is something we've both been dabbling on since cheaper versions were made available. So you didn't have to get the official board, you could get a clone. And there's a few clones that's going around, but we went for what's his name? Can you remember the name? Taki Udon? Is it?
Taki Udon.
Yeah. So he had a board. We both missed the first batch because it sold out pretty much instantly.
I thought you got the first one.
Mm-mm.
You did?
Well, it depends how you look at it. So there was 2 days we could get the first batch.
Yeah. And
So I got the second day of the first batch, if you look at it that way.
Right, so it's the
Okay, fine.
You're
I just about got on the first batch, but I had to stay up really late at night and fail miserably on the first occasion, and then finally got there on the second occasion. I think you got in batch 2.
I tried the first one. I couldn't get anywhere near it, so I just gave up. And I certainly wasn't going to stay up till 4 a.m.
No,
just to screw up on it. Although you succeeded, so that was good. But the second one was all right. So yeah, I waited. But he keeps the thing about Taki is it's like he puts something out and then there's a huge rush to buy 1,000 units or whatever it is, and then then he goes, yeah, right, well, I'm going to redesign it now. So here's the waiting list for the second batch, and it's going to be like ages. He just he just sort of tweaks things and then says whatever he wants. I mean, it's a good way to do things because he's not some mega corporation, but it could be a little frustrating because I just did the same thing with the Super Nice. He's done like a more specific PlayStation One. What does he call it? SuperStation, something like that.
Yes, indeed.
And I thought that looked like a fantastic idea because it's just focused and simple, and doesn't presumably it's not as difficult to deal with as an actual MiSTer is. So there was one of those, and I thought, well, shan't I? I'll wait, and there'll be another one like real soon, because we were just thinking about the PSX after all that stuff. So now I really fancy one. Anyway, but he's like saying, oh yeah, it's going to be probably 2025 for batch 2, like really late in the year or something, because he's redoing loads of parts of it. So, but that's Taki, that's what he does. If you really want something, I guess you do have to stay up.
You do indeed. And as you say, he's not a mega corporation, far from it. So he's going to be learning throughout the process. It's probably only when you get it into the hands of real people testing it in ways you'd never possibly imagine that then these nuances or quirks appear. So when the first one came out, there was a concern on the memory speed, and it was causing some problems on the N64 core and things like that. I've been lucky; mine's not had a problem, but I know a lot of people did. I think the analog audio out had some problems, which I haven't tested yet because I'm actually going through HDMI to a monitor, which is then feeding the audio out to my speakers. But because I've got the analog board as well, it's going just the video out to the CRT screen. But the analog audio isn't actually going into the TV because it's feeding from the digital HDMI. So I haven't tested that yet. I should probably do that. But it's been working absolutely fine for me. But it's inevitable. You open up something like a Commodore 64 and you'll see there's different revisions of that where they've been cost-cutting and saving money and optimizing. So it's all part of the fun. Early adopter syndrome, you take the risk.
Yeah. Well, I'm amazed these things work at all, to be honest. Given the complexity and the amount of software involved, it amazes me that any of it works.
Absolutely. And it's been nice because FPGA has become far more accessible. So the FPGA we're specifically talking about is that it's used for the MiSTer project, which has been a project that's been around for a few years, particularly I'd say in the last 12 months, it's really come along in terms of adding new platforms. So the Sony PlayStation One came along, the Sega Saturn, the N64, which for a long time, the Saturn thought, oh, no, this isn't going to happen. And then it happened. And then the N64 was like the holy grail. This is never going to happen. And then that's happened. And that's running really well as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fun. I'm sure that's probably the peak now. Although now someone's working on a Jaguar core, and there's possibly a 3DO core around the corner. So if that actually comes into fruition, that's amazing.
They should be. They won't be a problem. It's just a case of doing the work. I mean, if they can do Dreamcast and stuff, then none of those machines are a problem.
Dreamcast. Where have you got the Dreamcast thing from?
I don't know. Am I wrong?
This is a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah. You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. So maybe there isn't Dreamcast, but there sort of isn't there?
So, oh gosh, okay. Right, going too deep into this, and anyone who's been following the fun of FPGA, someone claimed that they were building a brand new FPGA board based on a faster chip that could also do Dreamcast.
Yeah.
They then raised money for it, but it's never come into fruition. Because by all the things that's been shown visibly, allegedly, is just something that would never actually run. And it's been a lot of sleight of hand, sort of trick of mirrors that what the demos they did show, allegedly, be very careful to say this, allegedly were not telling the full truth. And it looks like potentially people have lost a lot of money, and we're still waiting to see if something finally comes out of it.
All right, so it's a total disaster and a scam then. But
allegedly,
but yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, we all know that processors and chips and things keep getting exponentially faster and cheaper at the same time. So I mean, I would have thought all of these things will work fairly soon. I mean, a Dreamcast is powerful, but it's not amazingly so, is it? I mean, I don't know exactly where it stands, but Dreamcast games don't look that much better than PS1 games, do they?
Ooh,
do they?
Oh, I'll wait all the comments on that one.
A bit.
My personal opinion was going from something like PlayStation or Saturn to Dreamcast PS2, there was a massive jump in 3D fidelity and capabilities and the number of polygons it could shift around.
Yeah, okay.
And it was probably after that, actually, the impressiveness of 3D technology improving was less profound as you started moving through the generations. You look at the last few recent console generations, yes, it's probably higher resolution, higher quality textures, more polygons going around. But is it transformative? Is it really changing the gameplay experience? Not really. But that was a big jump in what fidelity-wise could really appear on the screen. Right. It's just the same that Dreamcast was absolutely annihilated by the PlayStation 2.
Yeah. Okay.
But there we go. But if you're into up to Nintendo 64 and potentially the Atari Jaguar, which is a little, I don't think many people would have actually owned a Jaguar. It wasn't certainly as popular as other platforms, but everything before N64, there's lots of calls that will probably suit your interest. And you do have an Atari Jaguar, the real thing.
I do have with one game, yeah.
And what's the one game, remind me?
Tempest.
Oh, good old Tempest.
Yeah. Lovely.
So of FPGA then, what was your desire to get one? And what have you been doing with it?
Just to see if it worked, really, just out of amusement. I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, the Mister one that we've got, the Taki Mister. I don't think it's a consumer item at all because it's just too fiddly to set up. I mean, I'm reasonably good with computers, I suppose, but I don't particularly enjoy running thousands of batch files, which pull God knows what from the internet, and then you have to read something else and do something else, and each machine is slightly different, so you have to learn where to put the files and some of them work, some of them don't. I mean, it's all tweaky hit and miss, isn't it? I mean, it's fun if you're up for it, but it's not a consumer device by any stretch of the imagination. But it's quite. I mean, having done all that, I use it really just. I sometimes think of a game like, I don't know. I'll think of something like an Atari 800 game I once saw in a shop, and think I want to play that, and just to see how it does a certain thing. So I'll dig it out and see if I can get it to work. That's what I use it for. So I got a very strange random collection of very old games on mine. But I did. What did I do? I think I got the next core to work. So I tested UrbX to see if that worked on the next core. I think it did. And then because we're doing UrbX, we're doing it very slowly at the moment for the PSX. That'll come later this year. So we just made a start on it, really. Myself and my coder friend Ruslan, who's done the nitty gritty low level stuff for it. So we're very slowly developing that. But I thought, I wonder if because it's all very well to have an emulator on a Windows machine running some code that pretends it's PSX, but does it work on a real PSX? So we bought two chipped PSXs and printed a CD, and it did work on one of those. So that's good. So then I thought, Mister. So I set up the Mister PSX and put the file on it, and it actually ran on that as well. So that was extremely encouraging. So our UrbX PSX appears to be okay and perfectly viable. So, but that's why I'm particularly interested in the SuperStation, because that will be perfect for it. I mean, that kind of is quite significant for PSX, because at the moment, I mean, at PSX, you got Misters and you got emulators and you got chipped PSXs from back in the day. But if someone was making a new machine, effectively a new machine, a consumer level new machine running PSX games, perfect, absolutely perfect. So that for me is like super interesting. So now I wish I'd bought a revision 1, but then I don't need it. I just go, oh yeah, it works. But
other than the presentation of the thing, I don't think it's going to be that much different.
No, but it'll work out of the box. You see, so this is what I mean when I talk about consumer level devices. That machine appears to be consumer level. So you could say to someone, right, here are your options to run this game. You're just a gamer. You're not a tech person particularly. You can get a chipped PSX. You can faff about with emulators, and they probably won't do it because it's too faffy. Or you can get one of these new machines, and you'll just put the file on a SD card or whatever, plug it in, and hopefully it will just work. Because there won't be the layers of Mr. crap that the person's got to go through. It should work out of the box, and that's what I mean when I say consumer level. So we'll be able to say this is how you can play it. Buy one of these machines, and that's really good. I mean, really good for PSX software, I think.
No, definitely. And to have as you say, more consumer-friendly version is only going to help. And it still plays all the other FPGA calls as well, should you want to go down that route.
Yeah. You can knacker your SuperStation by turning it into a full-blown Mister. Yeah.
Indeed. But yeah, FPGA Mister projects, they are, I wouldn't say they're complicated, and they are complicated, but you have to put in the time to read all the guides, do it exactly as it says, otherwise you will get in a mess very quickly, and learning what all the shortcut keys are. Every core acts a little bit differently to how it runs, so it's not cohesive core to core. You have to learn a lot about each one, how to load a tape image versus a disk image versus a cartridge versus whatever it may look like. The format of the files is important. So for consumer friendliness, this is not one of those mini hardware things you can buy like the Amiga or the Mega Drive where you just plug it into your TV and it's got HDMI and away you go. This requires extra doodling and faffing around with it. It's very rewarding when you get to that point when things are running well. But the fact you do have to put a lot of research effort in, there's plenty of great guides online and videos, but not everybody wants to go to that level of complexity. People just want to plug it in sometimes and just play a game.
There's a reason those mini PSXs and all the rest of them, Amigas, and there's loads in the Spectrum even. I mean, they sell really well, like much better than people suspect actually, and it's because they're just out the box. It's got the game you want quite easily, and it plugs into HDMI. That's it. That's what people want at a consumer level.
Exactly. And it may not have all the games that you could throw at something like an FPGA. It may, most of them are 720p resolution, but it's exactly that. You plug it into your TV's HDMI and away you go. It's software emulation, which some people put their nose up at, but it's still very good emulation on the most part. So they can play the games and remember, and that's the important thing. They don't want all the extra effort that folk like me will be willing to go for something that's claimed to be as accurate to real hardware as possible. But they're always updating the cores to make it closer to the real hardware. But as wonderful as FPGA is, sometimes it's nice to actually use the real hardware as well. So you've got the keyboard layouts as you would expect, the function buttons where you want them. And it's just nice to have the real thing sometimes. But again, it's the pain of making sure the capacitors are okay, buying new power supplies, buying the correct SCART cable, then the OSSC to plug into a HDMI compatible TV if you haven't got something CRT. And there's something to be said for just plug and play.
Yeah, it's all good in its own way, isn't it? I mean, I've got like 5 machines back there that need recapping. It's a huge job to fix it all and make it all work again. So yeah, and you need a Go Tech for everything as well, and plugging it into the screen. I mean, it's all a lot of work, isn't it? I mean, the dream for me is like there's all those mini ones, but if they were FPGA, for me that would be perfect. Because I'm one of these people. I don't like the emulation side of it really. It's not as good as FPGA. I mean, you can almost believe that you're running on real hardware because you kind of are, kind of. Kind of.
Exactly. I mean, there's some fantastic software emulators out there, but I don't know. If you're the purist, maybe FPGA is the only way you're willing to go, even though that's never going to be 100% perfect, because if you're still updating the cores, are they truly perfect? Or maybe it's new features, I don't know. But it's a tantalizing effort that FPGA brings for sure. But you've mentioned UrbX. There's almost a throwaway comment, but for anyone who doesn't know, what is UrbX? What have you been working on, Tony?
UrbX Warriors. It's a little arcade game that we're writing. Myself and Stu Cambridge of Sensible Software fame. It's just our little thing that we've been doing under the brand name Brazen Gameplay. But it's nearly ready. We've done it. We've done a version of this game for the Spectrum Next, and there'll be a PC runnable version of that. So we'll bring that to Kickstarter in probably about a week, actually, something like that. It's not far off. We're just tweaking the video now, so that's nearly there. But that game will then port to everywhere we can. I mean, I say port; they'll be like mega ports because we'll try and tune it for each machine that we do a version of. But as I said, we've made a start on a PSX one, which is looking like it's going to be great. I mean, the PSX, it's obviously famous for bringing in 3D, but as a 2D machine, it's absolutely awesome. It's just got tons of power. You can do absolute stacks with it. So it's almost a dream machine for 2D. So I'm really enjoying that. And of course, it means there's a third version of the engine now, because the first version, the next game, obviously there's a Z80 Next implementation, and then there's the Lua-based PC implementation. So we're now rewriting it again in C, basically. So that's what's running on the PlayStation, and then that one will go across to a much bigger Steam game and probably Switch if I can ever get approved for a developer license, and Amiga and stuff like that, And I'm talking of Amiga, FPGA Amiga. That's the dream as well.
We can do that on the Mr. FPGA already.
Yeah, a proper one.
A proper
AGA.
I guess it'd have to be the 1200 version as well to satisfy.
It'll do a 1200, an Amiga 1200.
It will.
I hadn't spotted that. Well, that's the dream. Well, the dream is a little one, or a new one, even a full size. I mean, I know they're bringing a full size Amiga, aren't they? But it's emulated. I mean, it should be FPGA. That would be brilliant. So that's my dream: a full size, brand new A1200 FPGA.
I can see the appeal of that. As someone who doesn't own an original A1200 because they are quite expensive, having an FPGA one, ironically, which would probably cost nearly as much.
I don't see why it would. I mean, it's just a chip, isn't it? It's just a chip.
And the case and the keyboard.
Well, yeah. Someone's got to
come with a joystick of some kind, I would imagine. A mouse.
But you could make it. I mean, people make new A1200 cases. I mean, yeah, they're about £100, but you could if someone sold the board, you could put it in a case if you wanted to. Or you can put it in an old case.
I've got one A500 here, which could certainly do with a new case. When I got it got this rather gaping hole right there. It's very yellowed, so the internals work absolutely fine. Flawless, in fact. They are, as many people have said, built like a tank, but the case, not so much. So, quite like one of those clear ones at some point.
It's funny that we all have A500s to hand.
And slightly off camera, here's an A500. Yes. I've actually got two of mine here, literally sat, ready to be set up again. I usually rotate, there's a desk behind me, and I rotate systems on that desk. At the minute, I've got a Windows 98 machine hooked up to it, which I've been setting up over the last few months and had a lot of fun with, which we can maybe talk about in a minute. But going back to UrbX, that's a lot of platforms. I believe Mac was also one of the ones as well.
Yeah. It'll play on Mac. I mean, it's developed on Mac, so.
So in terms of the Spectrum Next, given this is your first big project on it, how are you finding that to actually work on in development? Because that's been the focus platform all along, hasn't it?
Yeah, and of course the Spectrum Next is just an FPGA machine. So yeah, what's it like? Well, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it is a Spectrum with a lot of extra stuff bolted on it. So it's like half Amiga, half Spectrum. I mean, it's got a lot of power in its hardware. What's a pain in the arse is the fact that it's I mean, the beauty of it, I suppose, it's a pain, and it's good and it's bad that it's a Z80 processor. I mean, we love the Z80 processor, those of us that started on it in the 80s, and it's great to program Z80 again. The problem with it is it's 64K addressable memory. So I mean, that's great on a Spectrum 48, but on a Next, which has got 2 meg of RAM, it's all banked into all that 2 meg is little 8K sections, and that is an utter pain to deal with. I mean, you can plan for it and stuff, and get around the worst of it, but it's just a nuisance. So that part has driven me insane because I didn't properly anticipate how big this game would be, and I never anticipated that the code base would actually spread too large and have itself to be banked. So when you're banking the code, it can rapidly get out of control if you don't handle it properly. And in some ways I didn't, and I brought it back around, but it has caused a lot of problems. So I mean, I love the machine, but this game has grown very large, and it's well busted out of its memory constraints. So It's been interesting, certainly, and I don't think, unless you had a lot of experience from the originals at 80 days, I think it would drive people insane to try and do a project like this. There's probably not many people that could do it, to be honest, because it's just not easy, and it doesn't really relate to anything in the modern world, to be honest. Those days, that kind of restriction was quickly dispatched with in the late 80s, so when it suddenly comes back again in 2025, it's quite a difficult thing to adjust to.
I bet, because a lot of the later games you would have worked on would have been well past that era. We're talking about Beneath the Steel Skies and Broken Sword.
I mean, early DOS games were difficult because they had memory partition problems, and you had to use DOS extenders and stuff, which you'll probably know about. But once it was past that, I mean, even the PlayStation is whatever it is, it's 32-bit or something like that. So you don't have addressable memory issues even on a PSX. So once we got to that kind of stage, I mean, even Amiga as well, the 68000 chip, it was proper addressable flat memory, even if it was in different places sometimes. So there was a bit of messing on the Amiga, if I remember. But chip memory and fast memory and all that stuff. But that was like 2 or 3 sections of memory, not like 200 or 300. So even then, even late 80s, we were forgetting about that kind of stuff. But yeah, tricky.
As someone who has ported Broken Sword to the GBA, the Game Boy Advance, in terms of memory constraints and banking, did you have to worry about anything with that? Can you remember?
No, not at all. I mean, it was 8. We had an 8 meg cartridge, but that was flat memory. In effect, it was just 8 meg stretching out in front of you. The next is 2 meg. Well, I mean, the first one was 1 meg. We've forgotten about that machine now because it's 1 meg. We blew that restriction up like 6 months ago. But 2 meg is tiny, really. But it's because it's like 8. It's just not. That's not going to come across well on an audio podcast. But imagine lots of little boxes stacked up, each one with 8K written on it. That's what the Spectrum is. So that's what makes it particularly difficult.
So when you come to porting to other platforms like PlayStation, Dreamcast, Amiga, those concerns aren't as bad or non-existent.
Well, they were at least 16-bit processors, so yeah, no problem at all. No problem.
The irony.
Flat memory.
Well, I suppose if anything, by targeting this platform with this involved, it would have been harder to probably go from the PlayStation to the next than doing what you're doing the other way around.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's lots of reasons why we think it's a good idea to write a next game first, because you are constrained by the machine, and part of the problem with modern games development is people aren't constrained. So the typical path is to pick up Unity or Unreal or something and say, right, well, what are we going to write? And because you've got all these resources in terms of assets that you can just download for free and tack onto your engine and all the rest of it, pretty soon you've got you've kind of got a AAA game in effect, in terms of what the software will do for you. But then that's when it gets difficult, because you've got too many options. So people are too ambitious, and the games rapidly spin out of control and never get finished, or something goes horribly wrong with them. That's generally what's happening in games development these days with indies and anyone who's not got $800 million to write a game. There's too many options, and the game can be too big. If you start writing a game on a very restricted platform, then there's that that problem you have with what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, you don't really have any option but to work it out and adhere to it. So your game will be simpler. So you're just going to concentrate on what the core features are. What's the core gameplay, and not let it spin out of control in terms of graphics or effects or scope and gameplay scope or size and all the rest of it. And that's a good thing, because then your first iteration of the game is it has these restrictions, so it just concentrates on what it needs to concentrate on. And then, having refined that, you can say, right, now let's do a bigger version of it, and you build on what works from the first one, rather than starting at that point where it's just you just got too much scope to have it go wrong.
So how much time have you spent on UrbX so far?
I guess it's coming up to around a year, something like that, on and off. And we've all had other little bits of work to do, but it's about a year.
And predicted release date as of time of recording?
I suppose when it's finished, but the Kickstarter will obviously firm that up a little bit. I guess we haven't worked it out yet, but there'll be the Kickstarter across May, so June, July, August. I would hope late summer.
Okay,
just depends how much
too far away.
It depends how much we put in it. We can kind of make the map a bit bigger, and we can put bosses in it and stuff like that. So that's what we will be doing. We won't be like putting masses of new scope into it, but we can keep putting in more graphics and more monsters and stuff to make it more interesting. So it'll be a case of where we call a halt to that kind of thing. It's not
very much looking forward to seeing your Kickstarter launch, and hopefully we'll get you and Stu in a podcast not too far in the future, so we can discuss the game in great detail.
Yeah, we should.
I'm really excited to see it. When I saw it at one of the recent events where you had a demo, I really enjoyed it from the little bit that was available to see on that day, and everyone who played it seemed to play it for a considerable amount of time until they'd basically beaten everything that was available, which was good to see. It wasn't just pick it up and move the character around and, oh yeah, this is nice. They literally went every corridor they could and collected everything they could.
They did it. It was person after person. They picked it up and just played it through, and then when they ran out of stuff, the next person did the same. It was amazing. That was Crash Alive, wasn't it? I think
it was, yeah.
And it's Zap Live soon. 3 weeks.
Which I'm sure you'll be at.
We will. It's a great show. Everyone should go.
So, also recently I've been building up some retro-esque PCs. So here's a bit of a story. The local computer repair, he builds modern PCs as well, got in touch with me and said, I've got a few PCs I want to get rid of, and I just wondered if you'd be interested. I'm thinking, okay, well, what's he got in mind here? And he knew about the website Pixel Refresh. I knew I was interested in older computers. And to be honest, I've not got old PCs, mainly because they take up so much room. It's not like having a console or something along those lines. That's a much smaller device. A PC is not just the PC. If you're doing it throughout the whole thing, you want a CRT monitor, etc., etc. And I thought, okay, he says, but I'm giving them away for free. Now, in James's brain, that was ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. So I was curious of what he had. So he gave me a nice itemized list of 7 PCs. And some were probably like 10 years old. Some were more 20 years old. But he had a few that were early 2000s, which would be perfect Windows XP era.
So what chip is that?
So that would be AMD, sort of 2000 plus 2 gigahertz, which are actually clocked at 1.6. But I think what they did back then was, but we're equivalent to an Intel 2 gigahertz, so we're going to call it the 2000 plus. It was those fun times when AMD was rivaling Intel very hard, as they are still to this day. So I thought, okay, I'll pop along and see what they're like. And immediately I saw one in this whitish/beige and blue colour, and I thought, oh, that looks beautiful. I don't care if it doesn't work, the case looks beautiful. I said, okay, I'll have that one. But I said, well, why are you giving them away for free? He says, well, the charity shops won't take them because they need to be pat tested, and most aren't interested in going to that expense. And no one, and I've advertised on Facebook, and nobody was contacting me. I thought, okay, fair enough. So I thought, well, I'll definitely have the white one. And then I saw next to it one which was identical but in black. So it was almost like splitting up siblings. So James being soft, when I'll not just have the white one, I'll have the black one. Then I thought that's enough. Two's enough for me to dabble, and from those two, I'll be able to make it at bare minimum one very good machine. He says, "Yeah, but there's the other five." And I said, "But I don't need five." And before I knew it, he convinced me to take all blinking seven. So as I wheeled these out on this trolley to my car, thinking, how on earth I'm going to explain to my wife I've just collected 7 PCs, but good news, darling, they were free. Knowing full well they'd have to take up space in the garage until I had time to sort them out. But sort them out I did. So I had an old Pentium 4 machine where the case was just yellow, was scratched just by being in storage for so long. I actually transplanted that into one of the cases which had much lower hardware in it. That works great. But what I've also done with the AMD 2000 Plus one, that's got Windows 98 compatible drivers. So I've got one machine with Windows 98 on. So a lot of the old retro hardware I still had from back in the day, such as my 2D/3D Matrix Mystique card, works absolutely fine. I've still got my Sound Blaster Live card, which still works fine for the sound. And then I got myself a couple of Voodoo 2s to put them in SLI for 3D. And the pinnacle of 3D around that time was having any 3DFX Glide powered graphics card. So with all those things combined, I've got a really nice now Windows 98 retro machine, which even my wife has been enjoying. Playing something called Chips Challenge, which I think was originally a Windows 3.1 game, which is still compatible, but she's been loving that because she remembers it from her childhood. She's been obsessed with Theme Hospital, which, if you remembered Theme Park, and there's a more modern derivative of it now.
Bullfrog.
Yes, exactly. And she absolutely loves Theme Hospital. She's nearly completed it. She's on the last level. So she's been having joy with that. But then I ended up further down this blinking rabbit hole, Tony, because I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a CRT monitor? Just to complete it. And I'm looking around at my mood, and this is why I've got Amigas by my side, because it's like, where do I put all this stuff? This is why I have to rotate round what my fancy is at the time. And then one of the Voodoo 2s I collected, the guy said, oh, well, we had a bit of a chat. This was like an eBay purchase. And he said, oh, I've got a 17-inch CRT. I'm going to chuck it. Do you want it? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll have a look. And I thought, worst case scenario, if it's completely knackered, I'll take it to the tip myself if it's really that bad. And it was fine. There was just some screen deterioration where in between the glass and the tube, it was, I don't know if they call it delaminated, but anyway, whatever the layer is, you could see it deteriorating around the edges. But once the monitor was on and you were playing with it, it looked absolutely fine. So there was a Samsung 17-inch monitor I got for free. But around that time, I'd also put, before I got this one out of nowhere, if anyone on my Facebook friends had any CRT monitors they were interested in getting rid of. And someone said, oh, yeah, I've got two 19-inch CRT monitors. So now I've got 3 CRT monitors. All great. So I've got a really nice 19-inch one.
They're good things to have.
They are.
Work. They
because
work,
they get absolutely fine. That one of them, some of you might see it out of shop, but maybe not. There's a black 19-inch monitor by ViewSonic. It's called the Graphics Series G90 FB, 2000 by something resolution, and square format, which is perfect for older stuff. But when I first got it, it didn't work. The image was very blurry, and the on-screen buttons, because of course it's analog. So if you change resolution or refresh rate, the chances are the screen will be shifted over to one side or much smaller. So you have to press the on-screen buttons to zoom the image and get it to fit. None of this fancy stuff, because it's not digital. You have to tell it where the screen needs to be. And those buttons weren't working either. So I thought, uh-oh, this isn't going to work. But then I left it running for a bit, turned it off and on again, and it's been absolutely fine, touch wood, since. So that's working great. And then I've got another 19-inch monitor in white, a Yami or something.
Liama, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
We used
Thank
to
you.
buy those at Revolution.
Yeah. And that's flawless as well. So very, very lucky, but I'm going to need a bigger room.
Yeah. I kind of miss those old monitors. I mean, they were good. They were great in winter because lots of heat coming out of the back of them.
If you want to borrow one, you are more than welcome. I would welcome the extra space.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't mind one actually. I don't know what I'd use it for.
That's never been a problem for us, though, has it?
It's not really, has it? I mean, see, the thing is, it's another thing with the Next. Just to go back to the Next, it's 4:3, the actual resolution. So you need to buy. We had quite a lot of trouble buying flat screen monitors. That they're all widescreen these days, but you need one that will not only configure to 4:3 but hold the value. So every time you switch it on, it remembers. So you got to be certain that it'll do that. So I found a little Dell one, which actually wasn't very expensive and works perfectly on the Next. The only problem with it is there's no audio for it. So, or is there? Oh, maybe there is. Yeah, it's quite a nice little thing actually. But it was a lot of research to find that. Yeah, but it would be nice to have a CRT that did the same. But then it wouldn't work, would it? Because it didn't have HDMI. So yeah, yeah, HDMI is a good thing.
It is. But particularly with the CRT TV, it's great running those older titles. So the oddest example I can come up with is when I had an Atari 65 XE, which I believe was equivalent to like the Atari 400/800. It was just like a modern computer format style one, which had the looks of an Atari ST. So it was that system, but it was made to look a little bit more modern. And I loved it as a kid. And one game it came, I think it was with it actually, on one of the cassettes, was a game called Leaper. And it was basically a game where you controlled like a mouse character. And there'd be lines the screen, and each line would eventually have a gap in it. And you'd have to jump through these gaps, and work your way to the top. And every time you leap for a gap, it'd create more openings. But then the more enemies appearing and walking across the screen. Really tough game. But what I did notice, particularly with my FPGA, is you can have it simultaneously on HDMI and the CRT TV, which is great because half the time, not all the output goes through the CRT, only through the HDMI. So if you're going through the menus, unless you've done some extra configuration work, it'll only be on your HDMI. So it's handy having the two. But you can see the game running on both simultaneously. And what I noticed straight away, and you'd probably be less bothered by it when you hadn't noticed, but because I got them side by side, on the CRT, it felt so much smoother and more sympathetic to the refresh rate than the digital was. And because of the fact it wasn't a high resolution display, because I've got the Mr. through a 1440p monitor, because it's CRT, and these were what the games were essentially designed for originally, it looks better. So the pixels, the way they would have been drawn,
yeah,
it looks more like a character on the CRT, whereas because you've seen the raw pixels on the HDMI, it's just like there's some very distinct blocks there. Yeah, exactly.
In the 80s, I mean, they they drew on TV screens because monitors were too. It wasn't a true reflection of what they were aiming to get. So I mean, it was bad for people's eyes because they were. It wasn't good to look closely at a TV screen, but that's what they were doing because they wanted the graphics. The blurring was part of the work.
Yeah.
So yeah. But then some of these, that's why
job.
some of these modern OSSC things will actually add some of that back in software.
Yeah, so it can add scan lines, but the trouble is it'll often make then the image a lot darker because you've got basically a black line in between a natural line and another black line. Some people get around that on more modern devices. Unfortunately, the OSSC doesn't do this. It'll trigger HDR in a compatible TV, which boosts the brightness of the whole image. So you can still have your scan lines, but because of the HDR, it boosts the brightness and then it looks very, very convincing. Without the faff of a CRT potentially failing, or like some of my screens where the TV image is ever so slightly angled to one side. Some of them need some maintenance, but trying to find someone who can repair or look at a CRT are getting fewer and farther away. And one of my biggest CRT TVs, a 28-inch Toshiba, which I loved when it was working, but died a few months or so ago. Trying to lug that down somewhere to get somebody to have a look at it is a bit of a non-start. It's the first person who's sort of volunteered the services to at least have a look is a 2-hour drive away, and I've got to get downstairs into the car. 28-inch CRT is not light. So I'd have to ask a friend, and then I did my back in. Not anything relating to moving this TV a few weeks ago because of a previous back injury. So that weakened it again. I don't really want to be lugging around CRT TVs of that size. So it's just been put on the back burner. But it takes up so much room for something that doesn't work. Particularly when I've got little space as it is.
I remember we used to buy these 21 Liamas, and they were so heavy. They were incredibly heavy. It was like a brick of concrete or something. Real pain. I used to lug them up and down the stairs. Revolution.
I remember years ago, it was like one of the last CRT TVs before you started moving into flat screen panels. So this would be like around Xbox 360 launch era. And one of the last Swan songs was a TV with, I think it was Philips, where they had something called, what was it? It was Pixel something. But basically, it would have extra pixels on the screen, and then using some computer formula, it would generate what it thought would be the pixels around it fills the gaps. So it's meant to be slightly higher resolution because of it. But because of that, it did look a little fake. But regardless, because it had these extra Pixel Plus, was it? Because it had these extra pixels on the screen, the tube was more complicated. And they decided in this, I think it was either a 32 or it might have been a 36-inch CRT widescreen. They also thought, this is not heavy enough. We're going to stick a subwoofer inside it as well. So not only did you have the 3 speakers for center, left, and right, they also put the subwoofer inside as well, which meant when they delivered this TV, me and my mum couldn't even get it off the floor. It was so heavy. So we had to ask the workman to deliver it, come back just to put it on the stand so we could use it.
Your forklift truck.
It may as well have been. It was supremely heavy. There's no way even me and a friend would have struggled to lift it. It was so heavy. It took 3 people to move it in the end. And when we got rid of it, it was another 3 people to get it in the van. I was like, this is no way to live. And then you get a 65-inch OLED and like a couple of you like going, oh yeah, where do you want it then? It's absolutely fine. Just put it in position. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's a hell of a jump, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I like CRTs, but you got a nice feel from them. But these new panels, I mean, they're cheap and they're big and easy, and they don't use any electric, do they? Either, it's it's a big win, really.
It is. And sometimes you can hear like the buzz of the monitor. And once you hear it, it could be a little bit annoying. But that's why you have speakers connected and turn the speakers up really loud. But anyway, but no, I've been having great fun, particularly on the Windows 98 machine, playing Unreal and Unreal Tournament for Voodoo 2 in SLI mode when you could join the GPUs. Well, they weren't called GPUs back then. 3D accelerator cards together for the first time to somewhat near double your performance, but not quite double your performance. So it'll give you extra memory for the second card, double your fill rate. But it's just fun to dabble with. A lot of the games, I was very big into the PC space back then. So to be able to play a lot of those games again with the real hardware it would have had at the time, you can play Unreal now on modern devices very easily. There's just something nice about playing it on a Voodoo too. Brings back many memories. And a lot of games just don't work unless you have the original hardware and like a Windows 98 operating system.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, how we end up down these rabbit holes?
I think you're slightly crazy, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Old really, old PCs. There was something just to move on from, weren't there? Is that harsh?
I don't know. It's horses for courses, isn't it? I had so much fun because it would have been when I went to college. It'd be the end of school. I got my first 486. When I went to college, I would have got my first Pentium 1 and then moved through it all. And that era of PC was going from something bips and boops coming out of an internal speaker to getting something with OPL music, FM synthesis, to then wavetables, music playback, where it was sample recordings of individual instruments used in MIDI. And same for sound. You went from technologies to EAX, where you get that lovely reverb sound. As you went into like a cave, you get extra reverb added to the sound, getting surround sound speakers connected to a sound blaster. And it was just fun times. And 3D acceleration, when that came to the PC, it was revolutionary for the platform. Watching Tomb Raider in a software engine, then go to a 3DFX Voodoo 1 was mind blowing because you doubled your resolution, your frame rate went through the roof, and suddenly Tomb Raider looked a heck of a lot better than its PlayStation 1 counterpart. You're thinking, oh, this is very good. This is very good.
Of course, nothing's really changed, has it? Because there's a new graphic card that everyone needs every 3 months, it seems. That you need a portable nuclear plant to power it and all the rest of it. It looks exactly the same. My friends that play PC games, they're always looking at some graphic card that's just coming out and you can't get hold of it, and it's like it takes 5 slots in the motherboard, and it's like, goodness me, nothing's changed. See, I remember I don't have fond memories at all of writing games for PCs in the 90s, because what you'd have to do is you'd have to go, right, we're gonna write a game, like Broken Sword, for example, and it's going to come out in 18 months, like supposedly, and so you had to do, what's the low spec, what's the mid spec, what's the high spec, and then the publisher would say, what are you going to do for the higher ones that's better than the lower ones? And it's like, so you had these imaginary virtual PCs that were going to come out in they're not even necessarily available yet, or too expensive, but the prediction was they'd become cheaper. So you'd have to pick these three target machines and then add some sort of spec to the game engine that would target these different machines. And it was, and of course, it never came true quite right, because the machines didn't necessarily evolve the way you thought they were going to, and your schedule would almost certainly go wrong. So it was completely arbitrary, really. But it was a real pain. I mean, that was PC game dev back in the 90s. Awful stuff.
And how would you scale those? Something like, great. Yeah. Well, how would you scale something like Broken Sword, though? Because when we think of scaling a game nowadays, you'd be going, okay, you've got less geometry, you've got less trees and less bushes on screen.
Well, that was the problem. But if you boot up Broken Sword 2 any time, you'll see a little slider, and it does aliasing and stuff like that on George and the other sprites. So it actually, that was BS2 was the one where we actually did achieve something, and just with software on the graphics. But I mean, it wasn't much, but it actually does do it, And supposedly that high end, the top of the scale wouldn't work on the lower spec machines, so it was kind of real in a way. But yeah, what a pain. But yeah, that's why consoles were so attractive, because you just go, oh wow, it's one spec.
No, I can understand that. I was lucky I was the player. And trust me, there was lots of fun even as the player in terms of the quirks of it. Because sometimes you get something that was incompatible with another bit of hardware. Even now, experimenting with Windows 98, I get quite often the blue screen of death if I don't install the right driver. And the right driver doesn't mean it's the latest driver. It means it just happens to be the right driver version that works with this other thing I've got in the system. So usually you'd avoid putting the drivers that came with it on the system because they wouldn't be the latest revision of it. They wouldn't have the performance improvements and all the rest of it. But no, you have to do a bit of experimentation to find the one that works best for that particular setup. And it gets harder and harder to find the original files and the different driver revisions. There's a lot of great websites that have them. Archive.org is a fantastic resource where people have been uploading original CDs of what would have come with the hardware and manuals and things like that. But trying to find everything in between can still be quite a challenge. So lots of guides have been read. It's been like FPGA in that sense, reading lots of guides, going to lots of websites, just experimenting with different drivers, and even getting a game I used to love playing back in the day called Moto Racer, working on a Voodoo 2 graphics card. It's just basically a motorbike racing game, very arcade in style. But it's a game I remembered well because it came with one of my 3D graphics cards, the Matrix Mystique, but I never ever got it working on a Voodoo. But there are patches for it, which I didn't realise. So I had fun trying it. I got it to work eventually, but then everything that had alpha effects, like smoke coming from the tyres, were all pure black instead of being whites and greys. So then I had to find command lines to put at the startup of the game. So you'd find the icon for the game that would load it, then add hyphen alpha hyphen voodoo 2 hyphen whatever to get it working right. But how many people want to do that just to play one single game? That was me.
This is it. Yeah. So you'd be able to play Doom then, proper hardware.
I think to play Doom faithfully, I'd need a 486, or maybe a Pentium 1, because none of my machines have an ISA slot with an ISA sound card in it, which means even if you can hear the music, it wouldn't be a perfect representation of what it would have been back in the day. Some of the sound effects wouldn't be quite correct. Again, it depends how pure you want to go. I can play Doom, and it used the OPL chip on the Yamaha sound card I've got in there, but it's a faff. It's not. You'd probably need a 486 to do it properly. But there's so many Doom ports and remasters and 3D engines that it works with it. And if I was going to play Doom, I'd play it on one of the modern ones because you can then easily put it for a Roland Sound Canvas MIDI playback SC55, which is what I've got just behind me there, if you can see it. And that's the way to play Doom because that's what the composer intended the music to be played through. Rabbit hole number 5463.
Yeah, you need another PC.
I don't. I really don't. I've got my Windows XP. I've got my Windows 98. I've got a second Windows XP one on a Pentium 4. And the rest of the PCs, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with yet. But at some point, you can guarantee there's a power supply that's going to fail. So at least I've got some spares if I need them. Yes,
good stuff.
Very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
But it's good fun, Tony. It's good fun.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again. I'm sorry it's been a number of months since we've been able to do a recording, just me and you. But like I say, hopefully we'll get another podcast soon with Stu involved to talk about UrbX Warriors and talk about the Kickstarter and everything that's involved with that and see some gameplay footage and screenshots and artwork and everything else we can throw at it. But of course, let's see you again in the future as well for a more regular podcast going forward.
We should do that, James.
Absolutely. Okay, well, you take care, and thank you everyone for watching Game and Gadget podcast number 41.